This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
All right, I've got Christian Simmons, Night Sports Now, and the Pegasus Podcast talking UCF's 2024 schedule. And we mentioned this in another episode, another segment, but it does start out somewhat favorably for UCF. Like, nobody would be super surprised if they got off to a 4-0 start. And then, you obviously have the big one in the Swamp. But New Hampshire first, Sam Houston to open it up. And then at TCU, I don't want to say that that's a trap game, but you are going on the road. First Big 12 game of the 2024 season. Thoughts on TCU? I feel like that's, certainly could go either way, but I don't know that they're quite back yet. I kind of favor UCF going on the road and getting a win there.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, just as someone who covers the team, it's really great that we're going to know nothing about them through 2 games. That's going to make covering them very fun. But yeah, TCU is interesting because it's a road trip, and TCU is maybe not the toughest atmosphere, but definitely not an easy atmosphere to get a win in. And they're honestly very similar teams right now in the regards that they both think they're going to be a lot better than people are expecting nationally and aren't necessarily getting a lot of national hype. TCU went 5-7 last year, but they feel like, I've been reading a lot about them, they feel like they've done what they have to do to get back to being in the upper tier of the Big 12. So it's not an easy win for UCF, but I do feel like UCF feels a bit farther along right now in their development towards being a Big 12 title contender. So I'd expect them to win that one, but with a decent amount of fear mixed in there as well.
So the hype train comes to town week 4 with Colorado coming in. And I think that this is about slowing down Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. I think offensively, we talked about UCF is going to be really, really good. I think they'll score on Colorado. They just can't let Colorado match them. I also think it's early in the year, and so Colorado will still be kind of good. I wouldn't be surprised if they tail off some this year like they did last year. And when they're healthy, they were a pretty good team offensively. And so thoughts on that Colorado kind of hype monster coming to Orlando? Honestly, I'm looking at a few different games across the country that weekend, and that's one of them to maybe go to. I live in Tampa, so that would be the easiest to travel to. But Florida State's in Dallas, Alabama, Auburn play each other that weekend too. It's a fun weekend, but just staying home and going to the Colorado hype train would be kind of fun too.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's more important than any of this is determining which team wears black and gold the best in the Big 12. So that'll be a big thing in this matchup. But if you're UCF, you love that this game is early in the season just from a brand perspective because, we remember what Colorado was like before they fell off last season. I mean, the Colorado State game at 10 p.m. on ESPN got more viewers than the Iron Bowl did, than Texas-Alabama did. So I feel like from UCF's perspective, this is a game they really want to win because it's a showcase game. You're going to have more eyeballs on this game than maybe any other game you play this season, and it's in your stadium. You want. I know everyone's there for Colorado, but you want to kind of show off what you can do. And this, on paper, looks like it'll be a fun game. It could be a game with a lot of scoring, and there's lots of talent on both teams. It could be an interesting one. I'm going to give UCF the edge because that's the home game the fans are so hyped for, and I think the Bounce House will be rocking, and it's already been announced as a sellout, so I think that can swing things a little bit. So I'll give UCF the slight edge on that one.
Is the next game on the schedule the one that UCF would want to win more than anything else? And is there anything even close?
Some in these circles have called it the most important regular season game for UCF ever. I might be one of those people in these circles. There's a lot of hype around this game, and one-sided hype. I don't think Florida fans are nearly as interested in this one as UCF fans are. I think they're scared to lose it, but for UCF, this is a validation game. They got, especially from a recruiting perspective, they got such a boost from beating Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl in 2021. And that's a postseason bowl game. There were opt-outs. It's not the same thing as this. UCF knows that if they want to achieve their long-term ambitions of being viewed as a Big 4 team in the state, of being viewed as someone who can land top-tier recruits and go to the playoff regularly, you have to win this one. You have to show, especially given that Florida's supposed to be down, that you're on this level. The worst thing that can happen for UCF's brand and for this coaching staff and their recruiting efforts is to go into the Swamp and not be competitive or to lose at all, really. That this is one that the fan base is amped for and that the staff, Gus Malzahn has been very vocal about how important this game is and how this is the one for the season, which is kind of hilarious since it's a non-conference game, but they know they have to win it. They absolutely know they have to.
It absolutely feels like one, as an outsider, not a fan of UCF or UF, it feels like one they could win, especially with KJ running all over them last year. And Gus, I think Gus is a better game day coach than Billy Napier. I don't think I'm stepping on any, weak branches or limbs to say that. I think that it's one they could win. I do think that you just can't let the moment be bigger than you, right? And that's what it is, right? And usually in these matchups, the reason in my opinion, the biggest pitfall for UCF, and I'd love for you to correct me if you don't feel like this, but the biggest pitfall for UCF is usually the underdog, right? The team that's going on the road to play at the big boys. Like, they don't feel the pressure, and the UF would feel the pressure, right? It's how USF was able to upset Florida State a few years ago. It's how an FIU can beat Miami, and it's how those things can come about. But I think that the pitfall for UCF could be the fact that I think they are going to feel the pressure. Like, they do feel like they belong and feel like they could win this. It's not UCF of 10, 15 years ago where it's like, we're just going to the swamp to get our beating, and if we happen to keep it close in the fourth, then we'll start to believe. I think that the pressure will still be more on Florida, but there will be pressure on UCF too. And they're not going to catch them sleeping, right? Like, they're not going to catch them off guard. I think UF is going to get up for it. I think, again, their fan base is taking the game too lightly because, shoot, they could lose to anybody with how bad they are. But I do think that, that they don't get to play spoiler. Like, people are going to know that UCF's for real by this point, especially if they're 4-0 with 2 Big 12 wins, a win over, as much as I'm not fully bought in on Colorado being a great team. If you have a win against Deion Sanders the week before, I feel like people are going to pay attention. UCF could be ranked by that point. Like, UCF could be the ranked team going into an unranked UF.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's going to happen, And so, not that UCF's definitely ranked, but just that UF's not. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think the pressure, it's a weird situation where the pressure is ratcheted up on both sides, which maybe 15 years ago we wouldn't have thought there was much pressure on UCF in this game.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
15 years ago, 2006, I think it was, UCF went to the Swamp on a bye game. They got blown out. That was not unusual or surprising to anyone. UCF fans didn't particularly care, but it's an entirely new era now. And yeah, it's a good point you make, because as much as UF fans are kind of just in the boat of, we don't care, you're still a G5 team to us, that's a game that potentially gets Billy Napier fired.
Oh yeah,
lose, and he knows that, and that roster is going to know that. So there's going to be a lot of heat on both sides. And like I said, internally from UCF, they care. They believe that this is the one they have to win. They believe this is the key that unlocks a lot of things they're trying to do in recruiting and from pumping up their brand. And there's a lot of pressure on both sides, which I don't know if nationally people are quite realizing that, but it's going to be a very interesting, scary, and fun one.
Yeah, the game is going to be phenomenal. Again, I think it's October 5th. Is that when that is? Again, I'm in Tallahassee for Florida State Clemson that weekend, and I'm hoping that the times don't line up. Like, I'm hoping the games are not at the same time, because I will be very interested in, and I think, again, a lot of people in the state will be very interested in how that game goes. And
absolutely,
there's so many implications, like you said, for UCF, like, feels like they're trending one way and UF trending the other. Yeah, if I don't see a way. Well, I mean, certainly if they win all the rest of their games and lose that one, but I don't see a way that he survives if they drop to UCF. And that's not a shot at UCF, but the perception around that would be like, all right, well, if you can't beat the guys that we've always considered little brother, then you just got to go, man. Like, you got to get out of here. So, all right, an old rivalry. The week after that, Cincinnati comes to town. Not a great first year for them in the Big 12, but I feel like you've got to favor UCF here a little bit at home in an old conference matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that. The Big 12, I'm so interested to see how the league goes this year, because there's never been a conference like the Big 12 that has 16 teams that all are so generally similar, just from their rosters, from their fan base size, from how much they care about football, to their finances. I mean, it's 16 super similar teams, so you feel like so many are coin flips or are going to be close ones. This isn't one of the ones that feels that way. It feels like Cincinnati's probably a year away from being a year away. Satterfield was a weird hire. They haven't had the most amazing offseason as far as trying to get better from where they were last year. I don't think they'll be a disaster again. I don't think they're going 3-9 again, but this game being a home game for UCF, I have a hard time coming up with a way that UCF loses this game unless Cincinnati is wildly exceeding expectations on the kind of roster they put together.
You got 4 matchups here with Iowa State, BYU, Arizona, and Arizona State in the kind of the middle of the season. Iowa State on the road, BYU, Arizona at home, and then at Arizona State. I think if you're going to get a couple of teams on the road, like, I love Kenny Dillingham, and I really do, ever since he was at Florida State and then obviously Oregon and then out at Arizona State. I like him a lot. I think he's going to build something special there. I still just think they're behind. So if you have to travel to that coast or that side of the country, then I think doing it against Arizona State and not Arizona is probably a benefit. Arizona, I feel like, is going to be tough. But, out of those 4 games, how do you see the Knights doing there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said about Arizona State. It's lucky that UCF's one real West Coast road trip is against a team that's still in rebuilding mode. Iowa State's a tough one on the road. They might have the best defense in the Big 12. If I had to absolutely pencil a game in as a loss right now, it's going to be Iowa State. BYU's in rebuild mode. They're still sort of trying to figure out what their stance and what their image looks like in the Big 12. So that's probably a win. Arizona is the interesting one because that's a tough team. That's a really tough team, even though they lost their coach. But it's also the space game for UCF. And UCF has never lost a space game ever since that tradition started in 2017. That may sound stupid, but then they beat number 15 Oklahoma State 45-3 in last year's space game. So now we've decided that this is a thing and they are incapable of losing the space game. So we'll just pencil that one in as a win based on the uniforms and what the crowd's going to wear. So there you go.
Yeah, it feels like 2-2 there would be like acceptable, but if you could find a way to, get to the 3-1, whether that's winning out on the West Coast or, continuing the space game tradition, or, maybe you drop one of those other ones and beat Iowa State. 3-1 there would be quite the stretch. And then, man, I was a big East fan and remember watching, West Virginia and USF go at it a ton. And so the West Virginia matchup is certainly an interesting one against UCF. At West Virginia, and I think by this point, obviously, you'll know kind of where both teams' season will be. I think their over/under win total is pretty similar at like 6.5 or 7.5, and so I don't expect West Virginia to be world beaters by any means. I like Neil Brown, but I don't know that they're. I think getting this on the road, their fans are very passionate. It's going to be cold. But I don't know that this is like the biggest trap in the world. I don't know that I'd pencil it in as a certain win for UCF just yet, but I think this is somewhat favorable too.
Yeah, the bye week helps before too, so it's not like you're going to Arizona State and West Virginia back to back. I will say though, UCF fans little afraid of West Virginia because last season West Virginia came into the bounce house and became the first team to beat UCF at home by double digits in 8 years. So little afraid of them just from that. But no, I agree with what you're saying. I think that people are, I don't know, I could be off, but it feels like West Virginia's actually gotten a little too much hype up off of last year now. They were a lot better than people were anticipating, but I don't necessarily see them in that upper tier of these guys are going to go win the Big 12. So it's a tough one. That's a tough place to play. And you especially don't like that a week before a Black Friday game with Utah, but I don't think that's one that you have to count UCF out of right now.
Yeah. And then the final game of the year, senior night, it is against the, again, it's a very even conference, but it is against the conference favorites and one of the better quarterbacks in the conference as well, which the quarterback play in the Big 12 is really good just overall with some of the guys we mentioned, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, UCF included. Utah feels like a tough one, but it is at home. How healthy has that team stayed is a big question, and certainly Cam Rising is about as old as I am out there playing. So, if they're healthy, I do think they're going to be tough and they're a really solid team and Whittingham's, maybe the best coach in the conference. I don't know. A lot of people would probably debate that, but Utah feels like a tough one to end with, but I guess you'd rather a tough one be at home.
Yeah, my blind faith in the bounce house says that this will be a win based on absolutely nothing except that. But no, this is, I mean, it's kind of funny because the UCF fan base, the general fan base, maybe not the diehards, are definitely more focused on the Colorado game. But this is the big home game to me. I mean, you get to host which we'll see how the season plays out. You never know, but you get to host the Big 12 title favorites at home, Black Friday, Fox primetime game. I think the biggest question mark is probably just, is Cam Rising who he was a couple years ago? It's been so long since he played. We'll have to see if he really is still that player. But this is one that should be a lot of fun. And if all goes well, especially with how even the Big 12 is, this could be a game deciding who's going to the Big 12 title game. I think there's a decent chance that at least one of these teams, maybe both, needs that win to stay in that conversation. And now that Big 12 title game and playing for that or winning it equals a playoff spot, that could be a game with incredible expectations and incredible hype, unlike anything we've really seen for UCF before in Orlando. So I'm excited for it. I think UCF can win it, but I'm not ready to really pencil in a prediction one way or the other because I think it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen in September, let alone what are these two teams going to look like in November.
I can predict the New Hampshire game right now if you want that one. I think they'll be okay there. But
2-0. I feel a 2-0 start is great. So, Christian, where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your work?
Yes, you can check me out on the Pegasus Podcast. That's available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check me out on Twitter @CA Simmons, and you can head to nightsportsnow.com for my written work.
My bold prediction for UCF is I'll take the over. I'll take 8 wins. I know that's not necessarily what UCF fans want. I know they want more, but if you're asking me over under, I'll take the over on that. Maybe they get to 9. Maybe they can find a way to sneak into a big game. Certainly, will be cheering for them against UF. But that's my hot take. I don't even know if that's a hot take, but if I'm betting the over. So you've convinced me. But I appreciate you hanging out, man. Thanks for talking.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.